Good to go now? I will now call this special council meeting to order at 1:04 p.m. And we will start with a territorial acknowledgement. In the spirit of reconciliation, we acknowledge with respect the history and living culture of the Anishinaabe, the people of the Three Fires known as Ojibwe, Ojibwa, and Potawatomi Nation, who have inhabited this land from time immemorial. We recognize that these lands are the territories of the Chippewas of Saugeen and the Chippewas of Nawash, collectively known as the Saugeen Ojibwe Nation, the keepers of this land. Georgian Bluffs is located on lands encompassed by treaties 45.5, 67, 72, 82, and 93. We reflect on our role as treaty people and the need to live in respect and peace and show respect to the First Peoples who inhabit these lands and waters. And moving on, approval of the agenda. The recommendation is that the agenda be approved as presented. Can I have a mover and a seconder, please? Councillor Day, Councillor McComb. Any discussion or add-ons today? Seeing none, I will call the vote. All in favor? It's carried. The next recommendation is that Council of the Township of Georgian Bluffs hereby moves into a strategic session at 1:05 p.m. Could I have a mover and a seconder, please? Deputy Mayor Pringle, Councillor Coburn. Any discussion? Call the vote. All in favor? That is carried. And levels of service presentation. So this is following up from our June 9th, 2025 presentation. And so today's is starting at slide 26, and which is page 32 of the agenda package, and going from there. I will turn it over to staff. Do I need the recommendation read here first? Sorry. There's a recommendation here. Never mind. That's for way later. Yeah. I was expecting it was the next one. Never mind. I'll just tuck that away.
So this is a continuation of our strategic session that we had last year. During that session, we discussed many of the first group of assets, being our road infrastructure, our buildings, our land improvements, our bridges and culverts, and our technology. And out of that came a few recommendations by council, nothing that's been formally adopted yet. We posted those up on the board there from last time, but I'll go over them quickly. So the proposed levels of service for the road network, we're going to seek to enhance our gravel roads to a good condition, and that started with the advancement of the replacement maintenance gravel, where we're going to exercise that every 3 years for a road so that they don't degrade. The very poor and poor roads will be brought up to an improved state of fair at a minimum, and we will consider alternatives such as service types, traffic counts, road locations, and the functional classes to support this. Council also directed that a policy regarding street lighting, including dark sky considerations and neighborhood density, be considered. For our bridges and culverts, the condition of our structural culverts would be enhanced to good within the next 10 years. And that we look at cost-effective alternatives for replacement, including weight-restricted bridges where appropriate, based on connectivity and usage and traffic data. As well as, I believe we had, for buildings, the only thing that came out of that was that the landfill storage building be not planned for replacement, and that this building be deemed surplus and removed. During the water meter replacement, this is where we had stored all the water meters that were removed. And also this is still being used for storage of facilities equipment during the summer or during the winter. For lane improvements that we give consideration to maintenance and capital replacement for assets that are tied to settlement areas, population type, and usable levels, usage levels. Safety of users being prioritized, including maintenance on barricades on the trails and runoff from vehicles. Assets that are used by children, such as the playground equipment, or the future assets, such as the Temple Sarah School walkway, to be maintained is very good. That appropriate washroom facilities are available to use at township facilities, where we've moved more from a fixed building to the porta potty portable toilet system, so that they can be maintained and looked after in a timely manner. The proposed levels of service for technology and communication, that the average asset risk be reduced to low through disposal of obsolete and outdated technology, and that the average condition rating be enhanced to good through the disposal of the obsolete and outdated technology. Due to the nature of technology with such a short life expectancy, this is one of the more challenging ones, as there's always going to be assets that are going to be rotating through to that low and obsolete phase.
I just want to quickly say something before we jump into the new asset categories. As a reminder, this is the level of the proposed levels of service that we are trying to gain an understanding with council to inform our next iteration of the asset management plan for our compliance under Ontario Regulation 58817. That July 2025 component includes a 10-year financial plan. So by setting your proposed levels of service of where you want to see your infrastructure be in 10 years, helps us dictate on where some financial contributions may need to be spent for your consideration for each budget cycle. So your discussions today are just helping inform where do you want to be for your infrastructure, not from a service capacity, just from the technology and equipment that completes those services over a 10-year spread. It is not to say in year 2, we've met all of this. It is a 10-year spread that we're looking to achieve this. And the financial plan that we can create from it will help inform annual budgets and give you an idea at the time of your receiving of the asset management plan where we may see in future years some additional operating funds needed to accomplish those proposed levels of service.
Councillor Palmer.
Just thank you for that introduction. It's helpful to know the big picture first. So what we've discussed to date, is that comprehensive, or is this just sort of any new areas of focus for a plan that might already be in place? Because when I look under buildings, it feels like that's not very comprehensive just to have one reference to a landfill building. So I'm assuming there's a lot more to this than just that.
So this would be changes to our current level of service.
Okay. Yeah, because I was just thinking in light of the email we got this week, considerations moving forward for things like dark sky protection, the email that has to do with family-friendly change rooms in some of our buildings, that might be something that we look at going forward too. So that's the kind of input you're looking for today. Okay.
And council at this time has not provided direction on the topics and categories that we had already discussed. So that is the intent and goal after this strategic session for council to provide staff direction. So if you are wishing to revisit the buildings component for family style washrooms to be a consideration of our building renovations over the next 10 years, that would be a great item to include as that direction.
Okay.
So is this, we're to set the aspirational end goal and then you will figure out how to get there, what's prioritized, right? Perfect. Excellent.
And this is also why, because we haven't set all of these standards, why our asset management plan is not up to where it needs to be. So we need to have this done to get that plan recognized by whatever department looks after that.
Yes, that is correct. Once we have the proposed levels of service, we are able to update the asset management plan, which will help from a capital budget perspective of allocating where we feel different projects may be coming due and provide a more detailed 5-year, but we will have a higher arching 10-year plan for that, that you can have a bit more information of not just knowing the project that is in front of you, but potential other projects that may be coming in the next 2 to 3 years at a similar scope. I'll turn it back over to Brian, and as a reminder, we are starting on the furnitures and fixtures.
And then I'd have included at the end a review so that we can go back and if there were comments on the previous ones before direction is made by council, then we can briefly revisit those. So our furniture and fixtures, when that information was collected, this is mostly our large furniture and fixtures. So this would include the renovated council chambers here, the vault filing system in our office furniture. When we completed the initial data collection, the focus was largely on the accounting required for PSAP 3150 for capital assets, so that we could depreciate our assets. There wasn't as much effort put into it at the time on asset management. So we have, in this office, we have approximately a replacement cost of $68,000 for office equipment. Well, no single piece of equipment would meet office furniture would meet the threshold of $5,000 that's in our policy. Adding them all together into one big pool that is then tracked will allow us to plan for the eventual replacement of that without having to track each individual desk and item. Next slide, please. Since we have so much old assets, such as the office furniture, it's naturally going to break down more divided into equal categories as we replace old furniture and bring new furniture in. So at $68,000, that represented a large portion of our current furniture and fixtures. We aren't ever going to just say all the furniture goes out and as desks wear, as the filing in the vault system requires replacements, repairs. It will be a gradual event. So seeing that we are broken up fairly evenly into 4 of the 5 categories there is reasonable for an asset category such as this. Where we get into the larger items, like in recreation, where we have large purchases like the arena dasher boards and the glass and the netting, those aren't so much going to be replaced one board section at a time. Those will be major projects. So the recreation starts to break out into larger chunks where we do have some of the assets represented falling down into the very poor or the good categories there. Next slide, please. I think that would, so some of the proposed levels of service. Some of the items that we could do to that would improve our levels of service is implementing any of the ideas or improvement from the facilities master plan. So that had been scheduled to take place last year, was not able to complete it yet. So not able to implement or review those. But when we look at upgrading our existing fixtures, we can look to more energy efficient methods. Currently, we budget replacement costs like for like, but if that was the direction that council wanted to take, then we would move to a higher level of energy efficiency. Other things that can be done is installation of automation or occupancy sensors, so that if we all leave this room and the last person up forgets to turn off the light, after so long we would have the light turn out and save energy. All of those would require more costs, and the benefits outweigh the extra expenses.
Would you like comments as we go, or would you like this to say them? I would support that idea of upgrading as we go to more energy efficient. The furniture, I guess fixtures would be best for it.
As a question, is Real involved in the discussions about the capital?
So if council provides that direction, then that would be something that would be discussed with Riel, as her area of expertise.
I'm just thinking that her expertise would overlay to any of what we discuss, almost anything, like probably 80% anyway, probably not roads, but.
And that's part of the council establishing that level of service. How much do we want to look into that metric? Located under our building components would be our furnace, but similar idea. We budget for a heat pump going forward? Is that something that council would like done? Is we've moved all of our fluorescent tubes to LEDs, or most of them, continuing to get all of those up so that we reduce the harmful chemicals inside the fluorescent tubes and move to more energy efficient.
Is it too much to ask her for us to recommend that, like, given that is her job, that's her, is to lend this lens to all of our operations and all of our assets, that she would at least be consulted on almost everything to say, is there a better way around? And if there is, then a bit of research on her part, I assume that is her job and not an extra job on your shoulders. But that way, everything that comes would have that environmental lens to say, hey, like for like, we can get this. But Real says that for 20% more, we could get that and feel better about what we're doing.
Go ahead,
So
Sam.
I was just going to say the development of the financial plan is not just a finance exercise. It is
Right.
very much a leadership exercise and dipping into the expertise of every team member. If council does wish to set a overarching, not necessarily specific to furnitures and fixtures, recommendation and proposed levels of service, that energy efficiency is taken into all plans over the next 10 years. That is something we can set as an overarching. Your asset management plan does already include a brief couple paragraphs in relation to climate change, but we can look at enhancing that to ensure that that lens is not lost on future capital projects.
Perfect.
And I think from our position here as council, we're going to give that overarching direction to staff, but it will be then up to staff how that gets implemented and brought back through a budget process. Go ahead.
From a different perspective, in this category of furniture and fixtures, Some things have very obvious need to be replaced. Other things I sometimes see getting replaced for cosmetic reasons instead of functional reasons, like furniture. So I just would like to support keeping furniture while it's functional, even if it might be out of style date.
Yeah, thanks for that. We just gotta be very mindful of life expectancies of the furnace, whatever else may be around, or lighting or whatever. And when the life expectancy is gonna come up, we look at new alternatives and the best solution for the township. You're right on the furniture piece. Just because it doesn't look the greatest, but still swivels and you can sit on and you're comfortable, maybe don't need a new chair just yet. So I think we just gotta be mindful of when the life expectancy comes up, that we are looking to move forward with the newest technology, and whether that be, the scenario that's out at that time. But yeah, you're right. We just got to be mindful of that piece of it. And do we go to a heat pump, or do we go to propane, or do you go whatever, solar? There's lots of options, but we need to get to that. Like, I don't know, how old's our furnace now? Just for example. Any idea how old the furnace is here now?
It was part of the renovation in 2016 that it was.
So it's probably got another 10 years in it yet, likely, unless something seriously. But it's not, maybe there's an incentive 5 years from now that comes up and says, through the province, that there's an incentive to switch out, and then we look at it then. But no, we need to keep up with technology, but we don't need to do it beforehand.
If you wait long enough, things come back in style.
Touche. So based on what you are hearing, I am hearing, and correct me if I'm mistaken, you're okay with, for the purposes of furniture and fixture, your condition rating, maintaining a fair. You don't want it to necessarily go poor or very poor, that it becomes a hazard for someone using it, but fair isn't achievable, is where you're looking to stay with your furniture and fixtures.
I would agree with that.
Reading the room, yeah.
Okay.
In regards to that, is there any limitations on what that council would like to set? So if there was a technology that is 100% increase, or a furniture fixture that would be energy efficient, like, is there a line where that is, in terms of trying to budget in the future, not knowing what not what will be out and what the pricing will be, but is there guidelines around when energy efficiency becomes a part that needs to come back to council, or we always investigate the most energy efficient manner and then work our way back from that to see whether or not that fits in with the budget.
That's the strategy I would support, because we do want to move towards more energy efficient conditions. So the latter part of what you said, I think, makes sense, that we don't want to always cheap out for the sake of the cost in the moment, but you have to think about the, down the road 5 or 10 years, and how much we might be saving and helping with the environmental concerns as well.
Prioritizing energy efficiency. I recognize I put fair in here. Is that strictly for administration, or does that also extend to recreation? Recreation being your signs at the arena, the awards at the arena. Are those things you wish to have in fair condition as well, when they do have a bit of a public face in those recreation settings?
I would, go ahead, Deputy Mayor.
Yeah, no, I think in the scenario there, when it's public facing, it needs to be at least good. Doesn't maybe always be fair or very good, but it needs to be good condition. We don't want to be signs at the arenas that are fading and chipped and discolored. This doesn't represent.
If I may say something here too, it is in line with your parks upgrade that you did last year at the same time. Those were very public facing, and I feel like it would be a good continuity if that's what you decide.
Question I would have about desks and chairs. If we were looking at ergonomic for the health of staff, would we place that in there? Go ahead.
I mean, I think somebody addressed it earlier, that if it's a safety issue, an occupational health and safety issue, we're not gonna roll the dice with that. But that doesn't mean that we wanna see our chairs thrown out on a regular cycle just because they're a little bit older. We don't want them ending up in landfill, and we don't wanna have to buy new things that cause energy expenditure unnecessarily. So, yeah, I think what it means is if someone has an identified issue, you want to make sure they're sitting in something that isn't going to make their ergonomics worse. It's going to help them, but that doesn't mean you throw them all out and start with something new.
No, and I wasn't thinking of that. I was thinking of kind of the health of employees, because if you're working at a desk that really doesn't fit you and what you need, then I think we need to be aware that an employee is going to be healthier and miss fewer days at work if they have the proper kind of seating or desk to stand at type thing. Tobin, you had a comment?
Just very similar in that the goal of my comment was to keep functional furniture out of landfills. But accessibility and health are two important considerations that always have to be taken into consideration as well. I've learned a surprising amount about furniture through a school renovation in the Grace Novel, the library upgrades. So I'm aware that chairs need to be lighter for some members of our population and whatnot. So there are definitely considerations, but just thinking that through instead of blanket.
Yeah, you wouldn't do it just blanket. No, I just want to be sure that we capture that it's not, no, we don't replace furniture yet because it's still usable for 90% of the employees. But how do we capture that we want to be sure? Right?
In our our acquisition and disposal policy, we have it set out what our alternatives are. So while something here may not be, say the chairs in council chambers, if we deem that those were not accessible for members of the public, instead of simply the township getting rid of them, it is in our policy that we would see if something like the ITFD would be interested in acquiring those, and they might have something that is at a lower quality. So not strictly just, it doesn't fit into our scenario here, we have other options. It could go out to the Sarawak, it could go out to Shallow Lake, thinking desks and other things like that. So we aren't limited to just the office furniture being here. There is other furniture throughout the township that is in that poor condition that would see that maybe be shuffled down or.
Just to add to that, so you'd be talking like the 3 work yards and stuff like that, their desks and chairs and stuff that they have there, probably average at best.
Yeah, I don't know if you'd find an average chair.
I'm so
I
full.
still have my experience there.
And presumably people might not sit in them for
I think it's important to notice so it's not like we're saying, it's not a second class and it's not a differential treatment, but it's, the difference is that we have people here who sit in their chair for 35 hours a week. When you're talking about the chairs at the township office, they're not, so they're using those chairs if they come back to have coffee, for a rest break, for something like that. So it's not a differential level of service, it's just a differential need or requirement. And I think when you're talking about, so we can't take a break on occupational health and safety stuff. So, if someone has a requirement that they need, we can't, you're not setting a level of service that impacts that. That's an obligation.
And further to that has nothing to do with assets, but hopefully we have policies in place that encourage people to get out of their chairs. Sitting is the new smoking, so not sitting for 3 hours before you get up and realize that your back is hurting. So anything you can do in the work environment to encourage people to get up for that 5-minute stretch every once in a while is great.
Next slide, please. Or did you want me to? Okay. Currently, we are reinvesting about 3.3. The current reinvestment, our target reinvestment was 7.9%, about $13,655 per year. Right now, we are putting aside $5,712. Ideally, we to maintain the same levels of service or to achieve that better level of service for public facing assets, we would need to end up bringing this up to the same 7.9%. Currently, we have that built into the 15-year overall capital asset. Plan to bring all of our assets up to that fully funded level. But if this was a higher priority or a lower priority, then the funding can either be more, could be set aside for it, or less annually could be set aside for it. Or
How do we get to the target rate? How do we make that determination that it's 8%?
the target rate is calculated based on the estimated useful life of all of our assets and how long it would take for them all to deteriorate to 0. So something like a desk would be a 20-year or 5%, but something like a chair might only be a 10-year life.
Sam, did you have a comment?
No, Brian got that, so I was just gonna say what I'm hearing from the room, and again, correct me. You're still looking to maintain fair for and move the recreational public facing aspects of it to be in line with the good. So those may impact that target reinvestment rate that is needed to ensure that maintains for the purposes of the 10 years. So it is very much just a calculation of approximately how much do you have to have put in each and every year to maintain those objectives.
So I'm assuming it's gonna go up then, if we've gone from fair to good for rec. But my more, I think my more immediate question is, you said to move, that we're moving from fair to good for rec. Is that just Shadow Light? Because I'm thinking about the other two. What is good at Campbell Arena and what is, good at,
Kelsey.
or trails? Like, or what, how are we defining rec? Is it just Shadow Lake Community Center, or is it the whole, is there trails? What is it?
For this category here, it would just be the furnitures and fixtures inside of it. In the building section, that's where we would look at what the overall building would be. Whether we keep it as it is or we sought to improve that standing. So that would be your walls, your structure, your roof, your heating components in there.
But for furniture and fixtures, then if we just stick within that one category of rec, are we looking to, how far are we from good for Kemble? Like, where are we at with that one?
Through you. So Kemble, right now, unfortunately, the way we have our assets structured, kind of everything and anything that is in Kemble is all within the building part of Kemble. Part of what Evan and Brian are working on over this summer is to document and better dictate. Right now, it is likely our building category is overstated because those fixtures that are within Kemble are probably inside the assets of the building.
Gotcha.
that this, when we're looking at furnitures and fixtures right now for more recreational purposes, it just has the protective area netting at Shell Lake, the arena sound system, and a counter space. That is the context of what we have right now in our software for furnitures and fixtures for recreation purposes. So we know we have to do work over the summer to get those assets, yes, to better categorize.
So all the tables and chairs and everything that are within each building.
They may not even be recorded at this time. That's part of what we have to go and figure out. When capital assets was introduced back in 2009, 2010, it was very much from a financial accounting purposes of get an asset recorded, amortize it over its useful life. That asset management became the next iteration of that capital asset and providing not that historical look at, but a more proactive look at those assets. So right now, we have a lot of assets that, given their dollar value, it just went through our income statement for the purposes of each and every year. It didn't always get capitalized. So we don't always have it capitalized because it didn't maybe meet the threshold for capitalization purposes in your tangible capital asset policy. But now when we're applying the asset management lens, we do have to plan for that future replacement. So we are trying to backtrack a little bit here to capture everything that we do have so we can apply that futuristic, when is this going to come due? But the information we have right now is a bit limited in that scope. So there is multiple layers to this that we're just trying to help provide a plan on where we're going, and it is going to be ever changing.
It's not a sign of the quality of my memory, but rather that I can see the sign on the wall about land improvements, and some trail ideas are listed there that we talked about in our last meeting in terms of barriers and walkways. Just to pull out a piece of your previous.
Yeah, I'm just wondering how, like, what that falls under in terms of good, fair, poor, but you're saying it's not part of furniture and fixtures.
Right now, it's probably all within buildings.
Okay.
We do need to do a little work on getting our categories correct.
Sounds like our students could be very nice.
Happy to
And then
do
grant thirty, and then go to the CAO.
Yeah, so just looking at the chart there, we're in a fair position here now, and we're not even halfway to where we need to be at the end of the day, so we're never gonna catch up. Right, the math is there that we're never gonna catch up, so on the big picture of things, Samantha, I'm gonna ask you, for us to get to where we need to be on the target investment, what's that gonna be in the tax levy? What, can you break that down? Like, if we're looking for another $8,000 to get us to where our target reinvestment is, what does that pertain to being in the tax levy?
So for the purposes of 2026, a 1% change in your tax rate is approximately, very much say approximately, $140,000.
Right, so
So
0.1%.
Yeah.
Is what we're looking at to get us to where we need to be, that we're not fair today, fair tomorrow, poor, very poor, moving forward. Thank you.
The direction that, sorry.
I wasn't wanting to put words in your mouth, Councillor Gorman, but I think what you're looking at is when you get further down the road, maybe furniture and fixtures isn't the best example, but you're gonna wanna give consideration to levels of service at differential buildings. So that one building might receive a different level of service, expected service than another.
Exactly.
Is that what you're?
Yeah, that's where I was going with that. Yeah. But
We
now
didn't
that
want
I
us to lose track of
understand.
that, we can kind of pull that.
Yeah.
And you can base that on usage, basically, that's how I would do it. In life cycle of the building or whatever.
Our machinery and equipment is comprised of our heavy equipment that the operators use for road reconstruction, maintenance, items like that. In our recreation, this would be both the boards, the tractor, but also all the ice making equipment. So your brine chiller, your glycol loop, items like that that make the ice possible. And both of them in the administration building also include our generator in there as well. When we look at the replacement cost of setting this, we don't buy that equipment very often. So a lot of it is either it's pulled from other comparable tenders or it is inflated using CPI. But if we were to purchase something such as a new backhoe and we find out that our price estimate is off a bit, we will not only adjust the new asset, but we will adjust the other two assets to bring them up to the same replacement cost, assuming that they're going to fulfill the same purpose. So while we might see some little jumps, we might also see larger jumps if something is unique to the township, like the age of our ice making equipment at Child Lake. It is based on our unique circumstances. It's my understanding for that, but what works in one building does not always work exactly in the other, depending on how the pipes are laid underneath the concrete, how close they were to the surface, things like that. So while we have tried to do our best estimates, there could be some variations as we get into actually replacing them, but we do try to keep up with that on an annual basis. This is a breakdown of how our assets currently are. The administration building largely comprised of our generator, Child Lake comprised of some of the newer lawn maintenance equipment, while also having some of that older ice making equipment in there as well. Our transportation, we just recently purchased in the last few years the new excavator, and a few years before that a new grader. So some of that is reflective of, and our new tractor this year, reflective of why that is so heavy into the very bit.
So did you have?
I do have a question. The Green Fleet Plan, that was approved. So I was just wondering how linked it is to this document in terms of replacements for vehicles and just sometimes we have those documents that sit on shelves and don't get used. So just checking in to make sure that one is being taken into consideration here.
So my recollection of that was there were not a great deal of, it was focused mainly on our vehicles. I'm not aware of, in terms of the heavy equipment, there being.
Okay, that's a different factor.
I think, but I cannot, right, manager legislative services, but there's a council direction to the Green Fleet in particular to consider Green Fleet options when they are appropriate, functional, when they can provide for the need. So not in this category, but there is a council motion that directs us in that regard.
When we reach a position where we're going to replace an asset that could take us.
Correct. That we are to consider
Yep.
Green Fleet, provided that it delivers the same operational function. Yeah.
So some of the examples that council could set for determining the levels of service for machinery and equipment would be if our life expectancy for the equipment is set at an appropriate timeframe. Currently, most of that is 20 years. We don't seem to, we are developing a procedure in which we can track how much is being spent on the equipment each year, not just in terms of financial costs, but also in terms of downtime. So while a grader may only cost us, may cost a couple $1,000s in repairs, if it has to sit for weeks and can't be used, we have to take that into consideration when we go to service for road quality. Ensuring that our machinery and equipment meet or exceed our current demand. Standardizing equipment to allow for interchangeable parts. Currently, we have three, as an example, we have three backhoes that have three different manufacturers. And well, we are able to get quick connects so that we can interchange some of the parts to that. Some of those also do not work, do not fully function the same, so we have to then buy an additional bucket because only if it's on one. Alternatively, reductions in that we can reduce the services provided to extend the life. So right now, during the spring months, the grader is out. Both graders are usually out, and they are working very hard to keep the roads in a passable condition. But if it was determined that that service is too much, then by reducing how much time they're out on the road, that could extend their life. Or simply just extending the service life and from 20 to 25 years, so it would reduce the annual requirement for replacement. Some of our assets have done a lot better later on in life, and some of them have not. So right now, industry practice is that 20 years is acceptable, but ultimately, we don't perhaps use a backhoe the same as a construction company that is using it all year. We use it mainly to load sand in the summer or in winter time.
Just a thought came to my mind there. I know we're talking about life expectancies of all of our equipment and stuff, but do we ever give consideration to leasing? Where you can lease long-term, like 6 years, 5, 6 years, and not own it on a tractor basis, or like there's all tobaccos. I'm pretty sure you can lease a backhoe now too and stuff. That way you're taking yourself out of that, limiting yourself to 20 years and its problems. And if you lease, I know you never own it, but in 6 years or 5, whatever the lease may be, you're getting it back and getting another one. That way you eliminate that scenario of always chasing the equipment down the road. And I just came to mind there now. Have we ever leased before? Has there ever been an option or looked into it to see what the comparison is on that scenario?
I don't believe that we have, and that since we have to have a backhoe in all three facilities in the wintertime, then there could be value in that if we don't need to have 3 backhoes available all summer, perhaps leasing it for the 6 months could result in a savings there.
Okay, Councillor Colbert.
Further to the deputy mayor's comments, are you aware, or is anyone aware of other municipalities who have leased equipment and what their experience is and what is the current best practice for a municipality like ours? I mean, surely someone's gone down this road that we could learn from.
For you, I am aware of other municipalities that do lease. I don't know the scope of exactly of what they do lease, but if capital leasing is something council wishes for us to explore, we definitely can have those discussions. Blue Mountains does lease, I believe, all of their light passenger vehicles. I don't know if it scopes farther to plow trucks, excavators, larger machinery. I know they are on a 1-year lease agreement for their light passenger, and I believe City of Owen Sound also has moved to, for again, it's more of the vehicle perspective that I am certain of, of their light passenger vehicles, but we can have those discussions with them to see if they have also already previously explored from the machinery and equipment capacity, if there is leasing opportunities, if there is a large enough market in this area to also support that.
I would wonder if leasing would make more sense if you needed a specific piece of equipment for a job you're working on, a project that's going for a period of time, but you don't need to purchase it long-term. That would make a lot of sense. I think when we need to have backhoes in every workshop at least 6 months of the year.
Well, one advantage of leasing too is it's all 100% payable too, right? It's not depreciated. So that's something that can go against your bottom line too, right? You claim all that. So.
It works.
It's a shift in where the expenditures
Yeah.
would be,
Right.
that it wouldn't now be from a capital replacement perspective, it would likely come more from an operating perspective, those expenditures. I can't comment on if it is savings or if it works the other way for us, but I do
Yeah,
understand.
no, I'd be curious to know. I'd be interested to see where, I don't know why I just thought of it and thought, well, what about leasing? Because it seems to be, we're always talking about the end of the equipment, and that always seems to be here. So just if we can, get ahead of that curve, and I'd just be curious to see what the numbers look like.
Go ahead, Councillor Day.
I don't want to change the topic unless everyone's ready for a change. But I am curious about standardizing equipment to allow for interchangeable parts. This is not a field in which I have expertise, so I cannot speak to this. And so I have questions more than comments. Because when we purchase things, we select the cheapest one for the most part, if it meets the criteria. So if we're always aiming for the most affordable machinery and equipment, then that might preclude being able to standardize which type of, which brand of machinery we're selecting. So would the cost of standardizing balance out the possible increased costs of not being able to purchase the most affordable machinery and equipment?
Part of that could be in that we determine what attachments we standardize to. As mentioned, there are different connections and things like that can be made. So if we were to standardize to equipment A, that would still allow equipment dealer B and C to tender, but they would have to include in their tendering the adapters and the connections so that we can compare apples to apples essentially, in that we've got a piece of equipment, whether it be a brusher or a quad saw or something like that can be used, that we wanted to be able to connect ditching buckets, that sort of thing. If we say that we're using equipment A, then it still allows everybody to tender on that, but we would reduce some of that, the township having to go out and do that conversion or.
That makes sense. And
Did we not give a similar direction to that a number of years ago, so that in each of the shops we were carrying all the same windshield wipers would work, all the same filters and all of that would be in each shop instead of having to have 3 different makes of truck? Is there not a direction given in that?
There was a report brought forward to standardize the plow trucks to specific manufacturers, and that decision was not supported by council. Another alternative would be also currently be when a piece of equipment such as a backhoe is replaced, it has always been replaced with new. Do we need to rotate through 3 new backhoes, or do we have one very dependable backhoe and to do work during outside of the shops throughout the year? And do we have, instead of replacing brand new, do we, decide that, a half life cycle of 10 years is acceptable in replacing a used vehicle or a used piece of equipment? You don't ever get your equipment into that good or very good there, but it is a potential cost savings. I think it's similar to vehicles, as we all know, the minute you drive it off the lot, the value decreases significantly. I would imagine that to some degree that's the same with heavy equipment. As soon as we take delivery of it, we would not get that same value to resell it.
When I look at on transportation here, the piece that's in very poor, is that section based on age of equipment or condition of equipment? What puts our equipment into each of those categories?
It can be both, but generally based on that we haven't been able to haven't developed a formalized inspection process. It is largely age-based.
Like hours on the equipment based.
So a piece of equipment could have landed in that poor to very poor based on its age, but it could still be in really good condition and usable for a number of years. Okay.
That's again, another thing that Evan and Brian will be working on this summer is creating some of those inspection sheets and other criteria that we can use to better allow for a more accurate condition breakdown. Right now, it is very much age being the year that we bought it. It doesn't necessarily take into account its hours of operation or the demand or usage that it may be exposed to that. Something could be used many hours, but it is at a lighter capacity than something that is used fewer hours, but a more demand capacity. So those are things that we need to gather information on so we can better define those conditions and create a more robust, it's called a risk matrix for the purposes of capital assets. But
So are you using a standardized risk matrix? There are a lot of them for this kind of asset management.
right now,
And so they'll take into consideration, for example, the importance of the equipment. So for example, like Brian was saying, if you had, one good backhoe and 2 lesser good backhoes, the backhoes themselves are important. 3 of them not as important. A grader and only having 1 grader, that puts great importance on that grader. Keeping that thing in good shape is super critical now because we don't have a backup grader, and so on, right? So those risk, like I did some research before this meeting, there are extensive matrices out there. I guess just we haven't been able to fill one out yet.
yeah,
But you'll be sort of applying probably a tried and true methodology against it.
yes,
Perfect.
it's balancing what information can we routinely have on hand to ensure that we are gathering it, that if it is, right now we have, when we're looking at the risk, it's the probability of failure and the consequences of failure.
Right. Yeah.
For probability, we have 2 components being condition based on age and service life remaining, so very much age-based. We don't have some of those others yet. When we're looking at the consequences, it's looking at your replacement cost based on the value of it. How much risk is it to replace, given the value, a higher value has a higher consequence of failure because it's a larger dollar amount to replace. And then the function, what department is it looking at? So those are things we can build into that kind of matrix to get.
Yeah, and a public impact, right? So that's a huge one.
So from what I've heard, and there might be ideas to the contrary, it would make sense to standardize what we can through the process that Brian described and to purchase some things used, given the use of those matrix.
Accessible, sure.
Just going on, I'm just thinking about the trucks, I guess, and the winter fleet and snow removal. we use 20 years as our life expectancy of that equipment. Is that a true number that we should be using with the hours and wear and tear and expenses we put on that truck in 20 years?
Previously, we had, council approved moving that to a 15-year for our plow trucks. In doing the, in reviewing the report with the fleet manager, when the new vehicles were requested, this year, they are not the oldest vehicles in the fleet. They are ones that are incurring the highest cost. So previous to that, in my time in operations and in asset management, our plows had been reaching that 20-year mark. The last 2-3 years, they are the ones that people run to in the summertime. They move out just enough to keep them going in the summertime, and then they are strictly used heavily in the wintertime. And it seems to be the newer vehicles and the tandems that are used year round. So some of the vehicles then are able to meet that life expectancy, and some, as we saw, continue to develop problems and aren't able to meet that.
Oh, great answer. Like, that's a great answer. But again, to us as council, if we're using 20 years of life expectancy, we can't get there, then we're doomed ourselves again, right? So is that the actual real number that we should be looking at on that piece of it? But
Well, it should be, we'd be looking at hours instead of years. I know you can do a formula to say typical vehicle is used this many hours or put on it in a year, same as kilometers on your current year. So you can work back and forth and convert. But if there are certain vehicles that are overused for whatever reason year round, they're going to put more hours on them. Again, that really probably should be the marker more so than years.
Mhm.
and not to take away from that, right? Like, really, as council, we need to know that
That's right.
it needs to come back to us and say, hey, this vehicle's got so many thousand clicks on it or so many hours on it. It ain't going to make the 20-year marker, and at least get it in our heads that something has to happen probably sooner than later.
But I think that's what happened this year, where 2 of the newer trucks came forward as needing replacement
Sure enough.
before some of the older ones, because older ones were standing up well.
Mhm.
Better engines than
Yeah, there were 2 specific vehicles, and once we kind of, in plotting all of the, I can't remember what it was, 13, 14 vehicles that we had information on for expenses, most of them held the pretty straight curve, and these 2 were years earlier and had already started to exceed some of that total expenses that the other vehicles were getting to at 20 years. So it became very clear that those ones are not going to get any better. They're just going to continue to cost. And in keeping some of our older fleet, some of it doesn't have the same components that are breaking. And some of it is just manufacturers' problems that have been known throughout the industry.
So are we affected, I'm trying to think back to an ITFD meeting where we talked about the age of the fire trucks and insurance payouts if there's an accident. Our plow trucks and such face that same insurance?
That's a very good question. I don't remember off the top of my head what the criteria that was around was due to its emergency nature.
That's what I wondered.
I don't remember what insurance classifies as emergency purposes. I don't know if that extends to a plow truck is deemed an emergency material. We'd have to look.
Does somebody die if the plow doesn't get down the road is the question.
I don't remember the insurance's definition of
Yeah,
emergency.
I guess I'm thinking if we have a truck that's still doing really well, but it's now 22 years old, do we replace it the same as we would if it's a fire truck, because there's not gonna be the same insurance coverage on it.
That's a good question.
I can take that away and follow up with our
Yeah.
insurance provider.
So if I can recap what I've heard. So, and first of all, I want to preface this by saying that since meeting Jerry 2-3 times, he's been to council since I've been here. I've been impressed at how well he seems to have his finger on the pulse of what's going on. I think he's the fleet management guy, so he's material to this discussion. So, and I'm really impressed at the discussion of so many alternatives, using the, thinking ahead to use some standardized attachments, buckets, et cetera, for the different equipment. The idea that Jerry brought forward to us, about 2 or 3 months ago, of keeping kind of like a parts truck around, to replace parts on some other trucks and so forth. So like I said, I'm really impressed. But it sounds to me, and I don't want to take anything away from any of that work, it sounds like we're, to some extent, doing this by feel. We don't have, objective definitions of our fleet, which is fine. We don't of our arenas either, evidently. So we got to start somewhere. That's all cool. Again, don't want to take anything away. So we don't have that. And then further to that, per Deputy Mayor's comment about leasing, which I think should always be part of the discussion. I think same as your assets like your laptops, I think you should always consider all avenues and what makes more sense to capitalize something, or is it a cash flow thing? And the lack of liability of hanging on to that equipment and so forth, like it's very appealing. So it sounds like we don't know a lot about what we have. Then we also don't know a lot about how we want to pay for it going forward, and thus what we can afford. I'm wondering how we can help you. Like, how can we wrap this up, this discussion, and how can we give you some good direction going forward?
I think like the capital leasing was a very good suggestion. And similarly, the risk matrix in that, do we need the 2 pieces of, do we need to always buy brand new? If there's a determination that, buying used is something that the council wants to examine, that's something that can be done. Because previously, everything had always been, with the exception of, I think, 3 pieces of equipment that I can remember, everything has always been bought new. It does, you get what you want in that way. But perhaps you pay a premium for that. Or do we revise it instead of a tender for a new vehicle or a new piece of equipment? Do we look at it as a proposal that this is what the township needs, and we are open to, something in the 8 to 12-year-old range that ends up being evaluated based on hours of service that it has, based on a visual inspection by our mechanic that represents Georgian Bluff's interests, items like that.
Yeah, and yet another game changer, another variable in the same war to get to. So how can we help with levels of service?
So with the purchase of maintenance manager 2 years ago, it allows us to track the failure models of what has gone wrong with the equipment. Previously, we get an invoice, we know that we paid so much for the asset to be repaired. Now we are able to track how long is it down for, what is it that is going wrong on that equipment? Is it the first time, the second time? We're able to recover that information now in a more formal manner so that we can build that information that we don't have. So I think part of that is that information is starting to be developed and will become available to staff. in order to provide these decisions. But in terms of direction from council is, do we think, yeah, I guess alternatives like leasing, buying used, levels of service. So we try to only we try to make sure all vehicles are being used the same proportion throughout the year, so we aren't using it heavy, or as we did with the last truck, approve the extended warranty, so that, I mean, maybe we do the opposite and we run the vehicle very heavy for those few years while it's under warranty, and the vehicles that aren't under warranty are more or less protected by not being used as much, also not letting them sit.
CAO has
I was just gonna say, I'm only know enough to be dangerous about this, so I'm gonna suggest that I hand it off, but there are implications to buying used too that we don't always appreciate, sort of over and above, from an asset management standpoint, because you need to, I'll just stop to let you go ahead, but when you're planning for the replacement of the vehicle, you may find yourself at the end of the life, almost near the end of the life, and needing to prepare to repurchase with this much window left. So I'll let you go ahead and explain the business of that.
So I was just gonna say, if you are buying a piece of machinery, right now we do anticipate it lasting 20 years if we buy it new. There is a risk if you are buying it and it's already 10 years used,
Sure.
that you're anticipating you only have 10 years remaining, which means now you have 10 years to replace it, opposed to the 20 that you originally have. So I believe that's what
Yeah.
CIO was trying to refer to, that you've scoped in that window. It's always something we can explore where possible or where feasible. So if that is some direction that you wish to give, we've talked about the capital leasing. We can add in there exploration of used vehicles where appropriate or where possible.
So would we also though, if you've bought something 10 years old and we're thinking most equipment is going to have a 20-year life cycle, in that 10-year remaining that we've got, are you having to build back up to a full value replacement? So instead of spreading that over 20, we're now working that into 10.
Yes, and if you have already bought something used, you likely have the 20 years of saving. If you're not buying it at your full anticipated cost for new, you're buying it at, say, a half cost, you have the 10 years remaining for that other half. That would be your hope, that you do still, at the end of, I guess, the 30 years, you would have had enough funds to buy a partially used and the full new. Just you've pushed the bucket a bit farther down.
So we have actually, in a couple of instances, bought used, and the one piece of equipment that comes to mind was the chipper. And I think we bought from the county to the point that we no longer worked, and we got a second-hand one again from the county.
Yeah, that's the other danger, right? So,
And I think you want to be careful on that scenario. Obviously, with the plow trucks, heavy use equipment, your graders and stuff, you don't want to be buying used on that stuff. And you do want to still look at your maintaining that quality equipment because you're going to need it. But if we're buying tractors for road sweeping, or we're buying, backhoes, I wouldn't be afraid to ever buy a used backhoe, because there's a lot of used backhoes that are 40 years old that work great. And if you go to a leasing company today, there's lots of backhoes coming back. You look at these big companies that lease backhoes, and they're all coming a lot. So I think you got to pick and choose where you go to get new and stay with or go to used. But a wood chipper, I wouldn't ever buy a brand new wood chipper, because there's lots of used ones out there, right? There's stuff out there.
Yeah.
And I'm just thinking about the brushes for the tractor. Like, we bought a brand new tractor there not that long ago. If you go online, you can find thousands and thousands of used tractors for half the price.
well, again, value prop and criticality. How critical is that thing? You really want to think about it. But a tractor, again, to clear some brush off the side of the road, of which you have many, of which you can get parts within a day, of calling the dealership, no problem. Some sort of 48-ton high-ho probably not a great idea.
No, right.
So, yeah,
There'd be instances where we want to have the warranty on some of that. And on a used piece of equipment, you may not get the warranty, but the plow trucks would be a prime example. We want warranty in those.
And I wouldn't buy a used plow truck.
No.
Okay, that would be something I would, you'd stay at that, looking to go new, but the rest of the piece of equipment coming down. And obviously a grader, they're a specialty item, right? There's not that many of them around, so chances of getting good use of them, you don't know what you're gonna get in that case. But I'm just thinking about the tractors that are out sweeping the road, or guys doing brushing on stuff like that, or, the backhoes. There's lots of options out there that don't maybe necessarily need to be new.
If I may, it's a situation of usage based on condition versus condition based on usage. In the sense that, like you are saying, if you have an asset that is very critical, you wouldn't want to risk that condition to warrant the usage. But if you have something that's less critical, you're willing to use it, you're not really too concerned with the condition of the asset.
what he said.
Should have said that to start with.
Sorry, had that kicking around a little bit, I didn't throw it in, yeah.
Is this the level of information you would normally expect from council? Or do you just want more, here's how we want it rated at the end of the day, what's the condition rating, what do we want to maintain, do we want improvement, do we not? We've said that, Jerry is the guy and he has his finger on the pulse. So I just want to be careful that we're not, getting into.
Doing Jerry's job.
Yeah. I feel like from council, our job is to say we want a higher level of service in this category or less, we want enhancements, we want reductions, or we want status quo. Is that fair?
Yep, what I'm hearing is not so much you're wanting changes around this, machinery, equipment. From what I'm hearing in your discussions, you're just wanting us to explore other alternatives. It's not necessarily you're wanting us to change something that we are doing. Maybe it's a matter of documenting something we are currently doing, but I'm not hearing much for something drastically needs changed here. You want to go on to vehicles next. And based on your discussions in machinery and equipment, because machinery and equipment is not licensed vehicles. So plow trucks, I am going to, as long as it's okay, ensure that they maintain and look for new and warranty based for those large plow trucks.
As you can see here, the vast majority of our vehicles are used by our Transportation Operations Department. So I believe we have 9 plow trucks, 2 1-ton or 3-ton medium duty ones have aluminum dump box. They will take the 4 guys, do roadside asphalt patching, etc. And then I think we have 3 regular pickup trucks for the road supervisor and moving hands. Administration, this slide's a little bit old from when we did this. We no longer have our Tucson, but we also have we still have the 2 pickup trucks for bylaw and building. Recreation also has 2 pickup trucks, bit heavier duty, so that they can tow around their equipment for mowing lawns, etc. Most of the condition is in very good shape, The few items that are in the poor and very poor, well, what the very poor is done, are just, I believe that is one of the old 1-tons in there. a couple of plow trucks, and some pickup trucks. But generally, we have been, as mentioned, operating on a 15-year replacement. So that is about a plow truck every 2 years on average, with a little catch up every now and again to
Brian, how old are the the smaller trucks, like the half tons and things like that? What's the general life cycle on those?
the two that are out here, I believe they're 3 to 4 years old. One of the roads ones will be about 4. I think the other one one of them is closer to 8 or 9 years. Parks has one about 8 or 9 years old, and they also have one that's about 5 years old.
How long do you expect out of them? Or do you proactively change them, or do you wait till they fail at safety, or?
The life cycle for those has been set at 10 years. The medium duty trucks has been at 15, and the plow truck is at 15 years. Our previous 1-ton medium duty one lasted, I think it was close to 20 years. So the trucks, the passenger vehicles, that's been pretty good in reaching the minimum 10 years. The plow trucks, again, have been, for the most part, doing that, exception of those two, and the medium duty. So those life cycle expectations have been pretty reasonable.
Great feedback.
Again, just on the administrative side for the 2 trucks that we got here, and obviously the one doesn't, Tucson's not here anymore, but again, if we ever look at the option of leasing. And do we have any idea what kind of mileage we put on one of them trucks in a year? Like, I know it seems like they're always here when I go by. So how many miles are we actually putting on? Do we have any
We
idea?
do have it documented, I don't have that in mind.
That's nice one.
One has a fair bit more than the other.
That's right, right?
One has a fair bit more. They were both bought at the same time, but one has a fair bit more usage than the other. The Bala vehicle is out a lot more, and the building vehicle is more dependent on the needs of the time.
Because and on the leasing side, you can pick your time for lease 2, right? 1 year, 2 year, and the mileage is what gets you. So you got to be careful of that market. But yeah.
So there's a couple options. I sent some, I'm sending information as we're meeting here today about leasing. So we have looked into leasing lighter duty vehicles. We don't meet the threshold for a program like Enterprise, so they require 20 vehicles for us to enter into the leasing program. Individual list, and we experienced this year, we're looking about vehicles where many of the options don't apply for a corporation. They don't as easily enter into an agreement with a corporation. For that, they try and shift you towards enterprise and say, no, you go to them and they look after a fleet. So still going to look into some of these options. So certainly backhoe, larger vehicles, and that. I think that, we'll continue to keep asking questions about leasing as an option, but yeah, it's not, we fall into a category that's not quite big enough, and too big, but not quite big enough.
So that's something for Joint Services Committee up at the county
Well, that's
to look
yeah.
into for all of
Yeah,
the
right.
municipalities.
Have the county go in and get a lease for multiple vehicles for multiple municipalities. No, that's a great ask for sure. So something to consider looking at.
We gave some examples before of other municipalities that were wondering if they probably meet the threshold, some of those things that we talked about for vehicles.
I'm just wondering, and you're on Joint Services
Yeah.
Committee, so it'd be a great thing for you to take back there.
Yeah, no, for sure. And that's in June. I think we're going to meet here again. So we probably meet it with the city owned sound, the two of us together, probably meet that threshold, right, or something. But I can ask Scotty Reed on
Yeah.
Thursday too, but maybe they do that now. We can just jump on board.
Can we assume after our discussions today, earlier discussions, that we would take a look at what we actually need? So take a bylaw officer's vehicle, for example. If it could be, right now, maybe it's an, F-150 or something, I don't know, it's a pickup truck that never gets anything in the back of it anyway. It's a neat opportunity for electrification if there wasn't a huge incremental cost. And maybe a car is sufficient, or a SUV sized vehicle. So, just sort of, again, bringing the electrification options more to light than it would with, say, a pickup truck where there's only like 2 or 3 of them out there that fit the bill.
So
So,
that was gonna be my comment while I was up here,
perfect.
that I think this is when you're recognizing your corporate climate action plan. You also wanna highlight in another plan and document that hybrid and EV
Yeah, absolutely.
prioritization or exploration at least.
And matching the car to the job, if we are sending out pickup trucks
Yeah,
to
for bylaw.
for bylaw and building permits. My compact Prius has taken me down most of our township roads and
You can get bigger tires for them.
Do you have a comment?
I was just gonna add, so we do have, you'll recall, you may not recall, this may be here for information, but we did approve 2 vehicles at budget last year. During our conversation, the 2 we're talking about replacing are the administration vehicle, which does not need to be, at all need to be a light duty truck. And another vehicle which was replacing an operations vehicle. But our tender, when it goes out imminently, is going to be for 2 hybrid or EV SUV vehicles. And then we'll look at repurposing our trucks when it's needed. So that is a good example. So if you look at it, this case, we're replacing a car that is broken down, and we're replacing a pickup truck that has end of life with 2 SUVs. So we're going to be net minus 1 truck at the end of this.
And then as well, this is where we would take the considerations that council had, or that had been presented for we could, when the timeline was expected that the heavy vehicles, like the plow trucks and that would start to become available, but with the council direction that we don't want to be at the very leading edge of that. So we would start to build in as soon as we can get estimated replacement costs on that. That's where we would start to build those into those years as, I apologize, I forget the gentleman's name that had presented that, but that's where we would take those into consideration based on council's previous direction.
Roger.
Thank you.
Yes.
Climate action group, yeah. Smart man.
It's Roger Martin, just so everyone's aware. It's a recognition for that. Roger Martin did a lot of work for us on our agreement in concert with Rio. Energy Initiatives Coordinator did a lot of work too.
So we've talked about most of these already. Adjustments are pretty complement. I don't know that there's been anything that we really need to add or take away. More, the next one, we're ensuring the vehicles can or exceed their current demand, and so as the CEO mentioned, moving the vehicles that are here that don't necessarily need to be here, replacing bringing the hybrid here. At the end of the day, these vehicles are able to come back here, whereas in the event of a winter storm or something like that, our operations guys will need to be out, and fully electric truck also wouldn't really work for those situations at this time until we have the infrastructure at our facilities in order to support that. Similar to before, we are moving towards that, meeting our overall investment goal. And as was in the asset management plan, it was anticipated that we would get there in 15 years for all of our assets. But largely it'll be the roads that's going to slow everything down. But if there becomes a need, then we can allocate more towards replacement of vehicles.
So on that last slide, is part of what you're looking for, like our actual reinvestment rate at 2.5% and a target of 6.1? Do we need to be giving direction to, let's get closer to that 6.1? Because I agree with the deputy mayor, if we're going at that rate, we're a long way from getting there.
So through you, we've had a budget cycle since this, which has changed what some of those actual reinvestment rates are. We purposely were not changing the materials presentation from the June. So some of those current reinvestment rates had through 2026's budget naturally adjusted to be more in line with target. So when you do receive your annual asset management plan update, we do report back on those. And that's where we caught some of those rate discrepancies that when we were setting the 2026's budget and prioritizing in the tax levy for capital purposes, we did adjust some of those ratios. So I wouldn't be too concerned about what is shown here as the actual and the target reinvestment rates. We had through 2026's budget already moved closer to what that target reinvestment rate is.
Good news before.
Yeah, it's comforting. It's comforting that we're not that far behind.
Closer than we thought.
Our last category is our water network.
Elaborate, can I just clarify, this is for what is specifically in Oxenford, not in any of our partnership municipalities, but just within our. When you cross the
Yes.
municipal boundary, that's where the water line would start.
Yeah.
Okay.
Where it crosses the municipal boundary and Aqua looks after under for the township's interests.
Thank you.
So there is some in here that there are some water lines that are not in here that are owned by the city of Owen Sound and by the city of Owen Sound, and those aren't included. And similarly, nothing outside of the boundary, Georgian Bluffs boundary is included.
Sorry, maybe I wasn't listening fully. You said water lines maintained by the city of Owen Sound. So that's south of Greenwood Cemetery and the VLA, is that all maintained by them?
Yeah, they're responsible for all the testing and the adherence to the interior regulations for the Clean Water Act.
So this, just to Tobin's question, this is just Oxenden?
This
You don't
is-
know other?
This is Oxenden, East Linton, and Child Lake, and
Okay, all
Water.
right,
Yeah.
I thought we,
I think what Tobin was saying there was in Oxenden, it's just from
gotcha, yeah.
the boundary out.
Not counting other people's assets.
Yeah.
Fair, that's good. I don't want to replace the name.
Yeah, no.
So, a large part of this is our water mains. Almost all of our water mains are relatively new. The treated PVC pipelines with the estimated 80-year life expectancy. So that large value and that large life expectancy does tend to skew some of these numbers a little bit. The other thing on here is the water treatment plant does not include all of the equipment inside of it. The Aqua has gone through and provided us with a detailed list of equipment since then. of all of the treatment processes, each and every component. So that number will be updated to reflect that. Overall, the asset category is good at 82%. Again, a lot of that does play in with the water mains all being in a very good condition. Some of the items, the curb stops with it's a 20-year life expectancy. Most of those have all since passed, but we don't know that a curb stop usually fails until it is leaking, in which case Aqua has to dig it up and replace it, or it's just never been operated. So it's just been left alone and doesn't. So if it needs to be shut off, it may or may not work.
So when you say curb stops, is that what, so when I was at the conference last week, they were talking about valves and how often those are opened just on a regular basis as maintenance to be sure that if you ever need to shut down part of your system, that the valves are all working. Is that what you're calling curb stops then?
So the curb stop service is just the property itself. It's on the edge of the
Yep.
line.
Okay.
The valve chambers on here, those are valves that Aqua exercises on a regular basis so that if there is a break or a leak, they are able to isolate that or stop the water from going into that area.
Okay.
Curb stops, curb stops themselves are per property basis. It would be what the water, essentially what we would turn off, they didn't pay your water bill kind of thing.
Oh, okay, okay.
So we would go there with equipment, we would approach the property, and it would most likely usually be on the property or just outside the property line. We would have an operator come with a tool and just kind of turn it like a valve.
Yeah.
Most of them are left open as people, continue to pay their water bill, have access to water. They're really only used in situations where that water demand is to be shut off.
Through you, we just went through our water meter replacement program. So we did have Neptune come forward to us with a few where they found curb stops were not working that we've identified, and they had provided to us that most of them, 99%, they were able to turn off, no problems. So we do know that condition, although here it is showing as very poor, that is strictly based on the age of the curb stop. Because we didn't have, and we still technically right now do not have a metric on another way of determining the condition of this next of turning them all off. But we do have a list of those meters that had participated in the water meter replacement. And we know the curb stop was operational at their time of change. So that is something we can incorporate here. We know the date that the curb stop would have been turned off, given the date that they switched their meter. And we know that it would have been able to turn off and turn back on.
Mostly Jay, you had a comment?
I do, but if you're still talking about curb stops, please continue.
I was gonna go probably backwards because I had to take a phone call and my apologies, but the one that jumps out at me is the booster station. Did I miss that conversation?
No, we've just got into this one, so.
That's fair, is that fair or poor? I struggle a little bit with the colors. Is that fair and very poor?
Correct.
Anything to fill us in on there, Brian?
So is that the East Linton booster station?
It is the one that's on Ishwar, is I believe it's the other one.
Which ties into my question, is this graph as presented fairly representative of all of our water systems? I imagine, we've talked about Shallow Lake previously and how that system needs, if I'm remembering correctly, that system needs more upgrades, or financially, there's some issues in terms of the cost of water and providing water. So I'm just struggling a little bit with having all of our water systems amalgamated into one graph when they're all operated separately under separate systems in terms of finances.
Review, this is all water systems all put together. The hope, I'm assuming, and not to speak for council, would be that all water systems are achievable to that good.
Oh, yes, I did, good water is, I want to.
And this, again, we're looking at the capital infrastructure, not necessarily the service that is provided by that capital infrastructure. So sometimes there is that differentiation that the water itself may be perceived as not as great quality, but the infrastructure that is servicing that water may actually still be in good, that it could be the operational adjustment that is needed. So there are a few nuances in that, but yes, this is all water systems all grouped together. We don't have the information right now, but we can break it down by systems to get that condition. But at a high level on what I'm seeing here, what you are seeing here is actually reflective of the systems as a whole. That I'm not seeing one system that is very poor for everything. It is relatively representative here.
I think it was just the water rates were projected as a higher rate in some of the water systems than in others, which is where my concern comes in terms of or setting a standard that would be harder for some of the systems to meet than others.
So at your May 20th meeting, because we just went through our water rate study, you will have a presentation from that consultant that was completing it. We have taken a bit more of a harmonized approach in the incremental increases for all systems to treat them equally the same. We had explored a bit of high level opportunity of standardizing them for all systems, but given the uniqueness of each system, we are recommending maintaining separate fee structures, but having the same incremental annual increases to all systems.
And I'm sorry if I'm jumping ahead to next week's meeting and not following that boundary of capital versus operating.
But if I understand correctly, we are setting the level of service of the equipment over the next 10 years, and then how it gets there is again.
Something we get to figure out.
And we can presume that we want the same level of service of all equipment in all of our water systems. Thus, here we are, so.
And this would be a minimum, right? Like, we don't want to be any lower than where we are now, right? We want to move forward.
So what do we need to do at that booster station to bring it up?
In looking at this, it looks like it is the pressure tanks that had a 15-year estimated life. So that would be something that we would be able to consult with Aqua on to see if that is still a reasonable life expectancy, that they are in that shape, or that was an industry standard that was applied to them and they are in better shape. And maybe should have been originally established at a 20-year life expectancy.
So it would have been a false positive in that case. Or it could be a false negative, like, I mean, it could be that the new standard of pressure tank is 10 years, could it not? It could go either direction.
Mm-hmm.
And you think that the 83,000 that's in very poor condition is tanks, or is there more to it than that?
That is the first part that I've found here.
They must be considerable tanks, so if you think about it, if
If
the one in your house is this big, then.
If I may chime in here, just I do have a little bit of background in water operating and stuff like that. In the last 20 years alone, water operating, like in the sense of drink water, sewage and distribution, has undergone rapid expansion. In the sense that new technologies, new implementation methods, new filtration, new processing methods have become very rapidly founded kind of thing. To that effect, industry standards have been kind of being reevaluated very heavily throughout the whole system. So we would need to go through and reevaluate alongside them, make sure that we're kind of in line with what they say. But just speaking kind of going away from the booster station point and more towards the water main point to kind of illustrate what I'm talking about. A lot of this is incremental as like over time production. So, you know, as a subdivision is built in the 70s, then the 80s, then the 90s, the distribution systems that they have in the septic system, even I can't remember the exact name of it, I apologize, I still am a little bit new here, but the development area that has its own, I believe so, it's along the lake shore there.
Beach has its own sewage
Has
treatment.
its own sewage thing there. That would be in its, luckily, we're considering them kind of the operators of that luckily, but the water mains that they have put in, even a difference of 10 years, the sewage lines that they would have put in a difference of 10 years it represents a very large variability, is the best way to say it. So we could have, you know, the newer the water main put in, we'd have an estimated life of 80 years, but if we went back to the 80s, 70s, 80s, and we were using cast iron, you know, tubing, cast iron piping like that, estimated useful life of 25, 30 years, and it can be reduced based on environmental factors and stuff like that. Again, as well with water mains, kind of illustrating my point, we don't know what's wrong with them until they go wrong, kind of thing. We don't want to be going around digging up our roads and just looking at them unless we have to, sort of deal, and we only do that if it kind of blows, which sucks when it happens, but it is the situation that we find ourselves under. So based on that, it's really kind of difficult to get that estimated useful life across a wide variety of implemented water systems, just because they aren't standard across the times that they were implemented, sort of deal.
To reiterate what Evan was saying, water, given the underground nature of the infrastructure, it's hard to know the condition that it's in unless you are sending cameras through every single line, which can get very costly. So right now, our practice is when we do have a water leak, we know that the condition of that section is likely not good because it leaked for a reason, that we are able to determine when was that section put in. That condition likely applies to that whole section. If we're doing a road and there is water there, if we are near the water and can see it, we are taking a visual look at that.
That's cool. That might also be a consideration you guys want to look into. I don't want to put words or thoughts in your guys' head, but for roads as well, if you know you have a water main underneath the road and you're redoing the road and the water main's due in 5 years, 10 years, and you're doing the road now, might be a proactive measure. Get the water main in there, and then you can have that estimated, you're solid with the modern 80-year life expectancy, rather than relying on 30-year-old pipes for the next 5 years. It blows and you got to do the road again anyway, sort of deal.
Okay.
I may be blurring the boundary here as well, and I just wanted to check the scope of levels of service and the assets that we currently have. Is this a time when we should also be considering expansions to the water network in terms of levels of service, or is this only looking at what we currently have and maintaining what is currently in existence?
For the purposes of asset management, it is typically looking at what you currently have and how to maintain what you have.
That makes it simpler.
So I was actually surprised to see the water mains at Very Good, when I thought there were areas, and I'm thinking Balmy Beach, Maplewood Crescent, where I thought those pipes were a smaller size than what's required.
So that is correct. So the lines would support fire flows based on the diameter, but based on the drawings that were found and that they were, and the material that was used being the PVC, it would still be, Maplewood would be, or Maple Crest is about 44 years old, or 50 years old now. But that only accounts for maybe a couple hundred meters. The rest of that system was replaced when it was north of Indian Acres Side Road. That was scaled up to from 150 to 200 millimeters. And similar on Bombing Beach Road, heading north, it was when that extension was done, it was brought back to the line that came down, and scaled up. So some of that water line has already been replaced. But, as part of, the levels of service, where we don't have fire, coverage, because of the size of the water main, is that something that we would want to look at in expanding the diameter by, 2 inches or 3 inches, I can't remember which one it is. The overall cost for the material, would be fairly minor. It would be the work to remove all of that old infrastructure and then place the new stuff. Balmy Beach Road, the first connection off of Gray Road 1, where there was a subdivision agreement, it had fire hydrants installed on it, but because it's coming off of a 3-inch line, sorry, I'm jumping back and forth between metric and imperial. That's how it was told to me. Then it doesn't, the lines that the fire hydrants connect to are large enough to support the flow. It's that bottleneck getting there. Similar in the Strategy Phase 3 subdivision, there are fire hydrants there, but the lines coming to and from the booster station are not sufficient. But we have identified, there are 2 major areas where most of our leaks do occur. One of them is in that section over there with that smaller line in Ishwar. So if that road was to be reconstructed, it would be brought forward as a replacement for that. And there is part of the original 96, 93 East Linton system along Balmy Beach Road, that has resulted in all but one of our leaks was built at the same time in that area. So that would be also suggested that while it's ahead of its schedule, the service lines, service connections there are not, are subject to whether it was the way that it was constructed or filled, but there is a significantly high proportion of damaged services there compared to anywhere else.
Thank you.
And, similar to Evan had mentioned there, the newer ones have very low leakage, and that is where the industry standard when our water systems were created, and most of them were built to child leak in East Linton, and also in 95, 96, 10% leakage was deemed to be acceptable at that time.
Standards have changed, kind of thing.
What is unacceptable leakage standard?
Oh, off the top of my head, I wouldn't know, I apologize. But I can say, I believe currently it's resting at about 5% or less, but I would have to get back to you on that. I believe the way that it depends on how you quantify that as well. There are different methods of determining that. Most common is a water audit, where you just kind of see how much you put into the pipe, how much comes out of the pipe, and then the difference is the leakage kind of thing. But that's obviously less accurate than other methods that are available. And then that degree of precision would give you your 5%, 7%, 10% kind of variance.
From an operational standpoint, we had done that analysis before where we knew what was coming out of our system compared to what was actually being built. And we had sent a few areas of potential concern to Aqua for them to further explore. I know in one of the areas that we had sent, they did find a leak. Yes, less accurate. It was able to identify a potential problem without them going down a rabbit hole of checking the whole system.
And that is where the margin comes in, so that they aren't going down that rabbit hole.
when we are looking at our network and what we're looking at for potential levels of service here, are you wishing to, over the next 10 years, look at having larger fire flow provided for those properties on the system? Right now, you're at 88.8%. Are you comfortable with that? Or are you wanting it higher to, if in the 10 years, those areas that have smaller pipes are coming due, do we look at exploring it to be larger pipes to allow for fire flow? It is not necessarily, we're gonna go and put fire flow pipes in everywhere.
No, I would see doing that, as Evan said, when we're already digging up the road, you're improving that section of water main.
Less disruption too as well.
Yes,
Makes sense to keep boil water at none.
yes.
I'm less, by having 0 days when water is not available to the water main, like, does that allow for repairs and maintenance if we have, I'm not sure I'm interpreting the next category correctly.
Those are two mandatory technical metrics that are included in the act. So yes, the goal would be that we don't have any boil water, and generally we do not have. I can't remember the last time that we had a leak that we had to shut off the water for an area for greater than 24 hours. Usually if it's a break, the size of our water mains is standard sizing, not like out in Calgary, where they couldn't get a pipe big enough. The local suppliers carry that. Aqua has some components of their own, and through their network, they are also able to source it from other water systems that they manage if it is a true emergency.
So that number of connection days per year when water is not available, that allows for, say, a 6-hour repair period of time when water gets turned off. Okay.
So I assume that it kind of works like an SLA where it doesn't count against you as long as it's a planned event. If it's an unplanned event, that's obviously what we're trying to keep to zero. And that's like we would actually roll out and say, hey, we gotta replace this piece of pipe, it's gonna take a day. You're gonna be without water. That's what needs to be done.
Yeah.
But the idea is to keep it to 0 days and 0 hours for whoops, the water main broke.
Get right on.
Gotcha. Yeah.
No, I'm just curious on, so it's basically 2.5% difference between we supply 91% of the people with municipal water, we got 3% basically not, they have water there, but they don't have fire flow. Is there a legal or a insurance web we got in on that? Like if we, like I'm thinking of Maple Crescent out there or whatever, where they don't have water flow or fire flow. If there's a fire out there, is there any way we get caught in the web because we have hydrants there but no water? If you know what I mean. Like are we on the hook anyway at the end of the day if there's a fire and they can't supply the water?
Maybe go to answer over here.
To that effect, just from what I understand, having chatted with Brian when we were kind of running around a little bit, you guys are protected, but you took measures to protect yourself because you ensured that your fire truck capacity, you didn't just have pump trucks, you also had capacity trucks which hold a set volume of water. Because you didn't have fire flow to all of your municipal connected properties, that was necessitated. I believe that was necessitated, but from what I understand, if you don't have fire flow available to a property, you do need to take alternative measures for the water providing side of things. If you were to get that to 100%, like all of your covered areas that are under the municipal water were protected by fire flow, I could foresee an insurance oh my goodness, forgot the word there, readjustment for your insurance rates. I don't imagine it would be something that would be negative, if that makes more sense.
I just wanted to make sure that that's been looked at and we're not opening ourselves up to something going real wrong real fast.
This is a metric that, as part of our annual renewal, we do have to report.
Okay,
to.
good.
So they are aware of that. I also know when I was personally getting insurance for my home, I had to also get something from the township. I live in Williamsford, so I had to ensure I was outside of a flood hazard zone. And I had to get something that also stated I did have fire
Flow, yeah.
flow options.
Just as a side note there, that fire that was in Toronto there last week at that marina, that was 7 pumper trucks end to get to the fire. Yeah, that's how they got to fight the fire. So it'd be quite a thing to see.
Let's hope we don't, fingers crossed.
Yeah, I know, yeah, don't need to.
CAO, did you have a comment there? Yep.
The other method that we've taken to protect ourselves is they've been identified as maintenance hydrants in that they have been painted black. So the fire department is also aware of those. So they won't show up and try to connect to it and expect there to be flows. But within the water system, they are able to shuttle from the nearest fire hydrant, which will be closer than finding a water source that they would respond to anywhere else in the township. So Maple Crest, they're able to drop the tank if there was a fire there, and they would only have to shuttle back and forth to Grey Road 1 in order to get a good source of water. It happens in Shallow Lake, sometimes with mutual aid calls, that they are shuttling back and forth to Shallow Lake as the water system as the best source of water.
That was the materials that we had presented. Looking at our next steps is when we're going to look at formalize some direction. We do have the posters up from our other sessions. So I'm wondering if council wants to take 5-10 minutes to look at them. We can come back, and then if you did have questions about something that was on one of the posters, we could rediscuss if you were wanting to change something that maybe hadn't directly been discussed in today's materials, but maybe at the first meeting that you wish to provide further direction on. We can take 10 minutes just for you to look, and if you become reappointed, then you can come back as a group, and Brian and I can work with Harley to start drafting up some potential staff direction out of this.
Sense.
And before I allow you guys to go, we did have from our first session something we were calling a parking lot. Looking at it now, data presentation to council and washroom/portable washroom considerations. Those were 2 items that we were talking that are more of an operational nature, not a capital level of service. You were looking for winter ops and traffic control plans to be presented to council. The staff can take that away from an operating capacity. The washroom and portable washroom considerations at facility booking is again an operation task that we can look at for those larger special events and ensuring if we do have a large event happening at the township facility, that we do have appropriate washroom facilities there for the nature of the event. It is something that our facility manager of facilities has been already starting to ensure we do. Looking at the classification of natural assets, once we get this, that is the next thing on asset management's radar, at looking how to incorporate natural assets into future iterations of an asset management plan. So just to highlight the parking lot items and what those were meaning.
Georgian Bluff has a lot of activities to do. It's really nature driven, and it's like the community is very nice, very friendly. And a lot of the locals come here every single day and they think of it as their therapy.
We're the Farouk family. We started farm on the lake and the community, everybody around it, the support structure, the township has actually made us to who we are today. And now that we have this set up, this whole operation is well received by the community. People drive down from far, far away to do camping, glamping with us.
A lot of people come from far away to see the goats, and they're really amazed. Sometimes we feed the babies in front of them.
When we think about Georgian Bluffs, it's really the Reiki forest bathing that comes to my mind. I'm a Reiki master teacher, and we were looking to bring our people for a retreat, and this property just popped up, and we realized that behind it's a beautiful forest. Every time we are driving up, I feel so relaxed. The air is amazing.
If you're an outdoor enthusiast, there's never-ending things to do. There's the hiking all over through the escarpment. There's the bay, the water, if you're into water sports or sailing. And of course, pickleball is growing fast and it's all over the place right now. So there's lots to do.
What we enjoy the most about Georgian Bluff is having access to the beautiful nature around us, the cultural impact from the First Nations to the local artists.
The trails and so many great things to do, and lots of business opportunity here, and tourism as well to support our business.
First off, what I love about the area is the scenery. It's absolutely beautiful. Like, it's right in the name of the municipality, the Bluffs. Another thing too that I noticed from living through here is all the small communities throughout Georgian Bluffs. They're very unique, and they might be very small, but we're very big with heart. Everybody looks out for each other, takes care of each other, and just the way locals support locals. So the ability to have a local business and prosper is very apparent here in Georgian Bluffs.
People are more genuine here. People are more sincere. They're kind. They know the word please and thank you. It's the way life used to be. It's more simpler. You feel like you're part of something.
The Township of Georgian Bluffs as a municipality is proud to serve its residents, whether it be looking after infrastructure, looking after our roads, grading our gravel roads, looking after our parks, our trails, our community centres, our ice arena, or providing the services that residents rely on every single day when they come to our township offices. I'm proud to lead a team which is here serving the residents of Georgian Bluffs every single day.
What we'd like to see Georgian Bluffs going forward is really, more people come in to experience this beautiful energy, this relaxed energy, because over here in Georgian Bluffs, I can hear the wind, I can hear the trees talking. It's just amazing, really relaxing.
Welcoming more people, yet with the same foundation and principles of community, of respect, and of morals.
It would be great for Georgian Bluffs to continue to support, nature and the beauty that we have here, and to keep our area clean and beautiful.
I hope to see more local businesses, more sustainable living, and more families just moving up here and living and prospering off their land and their property.
For me and my family, Georgian Bluffs means being close to nature. Having the escarpment to hike and the water of Georgian Bay at our doorstep is something that draws us to being part of this community. The family-friendly neighbourhoods, the fact I can connect with my neighbours and see them on the street and say hello, and I know the people I'm seeing each day, is something which for me is something I treasure and my family treasures about being in Georgian Bluffs.
are Dirk and Alma DeVries, and we are coming to you from Dual Acres. This is a beautiful property in Georgian Bluffs that we own, and we run a horse-drawn sleigh and carriage.
Okay, we are back. Next steps.
Harley has drafted a preliminary potential recommendation for council. We're going to try to get it on the screen. It is a large, lengthy one that spans 2 pages. While you were looking around and were waiting for that, were there any questions you had about the materials, comments, changes you were looking to make for them? Go ahead.
I'm sorry if I'm going backwards, but I did wonder about sidewalks and where we're at now, and that probably was a discussion way back when, but are we looking to make some improvements there, or are we keeping it as is, or where? I know we had a multi-year plan for sidewalks. Where are we at?
I believe 2026 sees us in year 3 of the 5-year plan on that, so either the tender has went out or it is going in very shortly for the hillside portion of our sidewalks and expanding some of the Sunset Strip sidewalks. That was our 2026's work. The staff are starting to work on some 2027 budget materials, and we will bring forward any for 2027 budget. But we have drastically moved the needle forward with our sidewalks with our last 2 years of work in Shell Lake. It's not to say it's done, but moving forward with it.
And the only other 2 things I would suggest if council was interested in adding is when we do work on our facilities, like Shallow Lake or even this office, to consider family-friendly accommodations and any accessibility standards when we're already in there doing work, and moving that needle forward a little bit as well.
Only piece I was gonna add to it, Samantha, was I see on the road network where enhanced gravel roads to good. My fear is if our goal is to be good, some will be fair. And I wondered if we shouldn't be upgrading that from good to very good, and then try and maintain an average of good across the board. I just, was just wording for me or whatever, but if we try and maintain good, because some won't make good, they'll always be fair. And I just think we need to try and improve on that. We've been trying to improve on our gravel roads since I've been here, I guess, kind of thing. And I think if it's just a wording piece, I know good's good, but very good's better and good's great. So at the end of the day, so that's kind of one piece I looked at on that.
What was our starting point for our gravel roads though? Because if we're already moving up to good and we were at fair or poor, then we want it to be a reasonable step up, not going from very poor to excellent all in, I guess you're saying this is over a period of time though, isn't it?
General direction was that the condition of gravel roads be enhanced to good, and that poor and very poor roads be brought up to an improved state of fair.
I worry about applying that type of thinking on one category, as opposed to all categories. If we're saying we're going to set our standard for good, but that means they're all going to be good or fair, you could apply that thinking to everything we've talked about. So I just would like consistency across the board for all the different categories in terms of how we classify the level of service.
Right, and I understand that, and gravel roads are a big portion of what we need, and everybody uses them at all times. So I just don't want us to be. We've been trying to improve our gravel roads the 7 years I've been here, and if we want to say maintain as good, that's, if we can get there, that's great. But I'm not sure if we're going to set the bar high enough on that piece of it. Gravel's overall, gravel at the end of the day is the cheapest part of our whole piece.
So I was just confirming with Brian, so our gravel roads used to be once every 5 year. We moved that to once every 4. We're now in year 2 of once every 3.
Yep.
That If council wishes to change it, we can, but in essence, it would mean once every 3, now it becomes once every 2. That I'm wondering, now you maybe keep it at good, recognizing your comments.
Yep.
That a next iteration of the asset management plan, we can reflect back on, did it stay good? Was there one road that was maybe unfair? Was it 20 roads that was unfair? And be mindful of that.
And that's exactly what I was going for, that we did move from 5 to now we're down to 3, which is good, and we're still working on that process. As long as we're watching it, I'm good with that. I always fear that if you're shooting for good, you're gonna come in less. Shoot for very good, you're gonna come in at good. As long as we're watching it, I'm 100% on board.
Right?
The other thing that's a little difficult with gravel roads is the day you assess it, they could be graded the next day, and that could shift it a lot. Right now, we don't have anything that's definitive on how to do it. It's only a snapshot in time of when we do it. So if we looked at it after we've done the gravel, maintenance gravel, and if we just did it this year, we would assume that it'd be 100%. But in trying to determine, is a road that we did 2 years ago, is it 80, is it 75, is it 70? I mean, it could change, if the grader went down in the last week or if it didn't. So I think gravel roads it's a little bit more difficult to put a quantitative number to in terms of that. So it would be kind of, a judgment thing, and instead of where our other roads are based on a percentage, I think it would have to be, we set a list of criteria that are in it, and if it doesn't have more than X number of potholes or something like that, then by default, it would be considered good. I don't know of another way that we would be able to measure that into all the different categories of good and fair and.
Time of year is going to affect that too. Deputy Mayor?
Yeah, so last year we had the extra money there that we put into gravel roads, and I heard less this year about gravel roads and repairs than I have before, because we have applied that extra. If we're getting to that standard, we don't want to go backwards on it again. And I'm not saying we should change, I'm just putting it out there that let's keep an eye on it, and good is good if that's where we want to be. And like I said, we have applied extra gravel the last couple of years, and the roads are better than they were. You can tell when you're driving down them, the gravel roads are better than they were, and our operators are getting better in the equipment, and good operators save a road in a hurry. So I just wanted to make sure that was out there to put that in the forefront of things to watch.
So going on with that though, do we want to look at getting some of these gravel roads that have higher traffic taken up to a hard surface? And I'm thinking of one like Hyman Road between Concession 14 down to Gray Road 170. I drove that one this spring. It's not great. There's some that are worse, but do we want to look at starting to take the more traveled roads and moving them up to a better class of road? What's the color?
Yeah, I don't want to impede the answer, but my question is this the table to have that discussion when we're then committing money to it? That seems like that's a budget discussion.
I think this type of conversation though will give staff the direction they need when they're coming back with budget to say, okay, if we do this, it's going to increase budget by that amount. Harley?
Through you, there is a direction in that was captured in the last session, which included discussion about a 10-year plan, which would consider alternative surfaces and road types. That would take into consideration traffic counts, road location, and all of those things. So the direction was encapsulated there for staff to have a broader look and develop that 10-year plan, with the direction being provided by council for those levels of service.
Just further to Brian, your remarks about measuring the status of the road and how hard that can be depending on the time of year when it's been freshly gravelled. We have some data before us presented here to say, you know, fair, poor. How do you know when the next time you go to measure that? And we just have to make sure we're measuring apples and apples so that you're not picking a different time of the year, or so that we can look at it. We can look at this one, we can look at the next one and go, okay, we've improved in this category. So how do you make sure you're assessing it in the same way?
And that's where we would have to set criteria such as the number of potholes or like a roughness, like if there's washboarding, if there's, and basically I think for a gravel road it would almost be like it would be similar to the PCI for that would be done if you were driving a paved road, but it would be heavily modified to be looked just for the defects that you could see on a gravel road. Is there a washout that is there potholes, is there, and maybe it needs to be done where it is the supervisor or the person doing the assessment does it 5 days after it's been graded, or a standard like that, so that yes, we are comparing apples to apples. Because driver A goes out and he grades certain roads, and then driver B goes out and he maybe does it in a different direction, then I think the only way to fairly do it would be to set a standard so that it's X number of days after an event like that has happened, provided that it hasn't rained, or we do it after we've applied calcium for the year, in which case we stop touching it at that point, so that we don't destroy the dust control.
I get, and that's another piece that goes, like, we can enhance the road to being good, but if the ditches can't take the water that's on the road at that time, or we don't have the proper slope on the road, that all adds to deterioration of the road quicker. So I guess the bigger piece is, yeah, the ditching aspect and the grading all plays into how good a road will last. So I know staff's all mindful of all that anyway, so it does make a difference.
I do like the idea of a quantifiable standard procedure for assessing the quality of the gravel roads.
Another thing that kind of similar about the maintenance and is there a standard that we would want to see done so that we, speaking of drainage, and that we want to develop, that council would like to see it focused on, that before we resurface a road, we are going to do similar things, like we're going to make sure that the shoulders are peeled back so that there's no vegetation there. That is all considered as part of that road reconstruction, and is budgeted for accordingly, or is it that we continue to just address problem areas as they arise, or are we looking to be more proactive, understanding that there will be a bit of a short-term cost to it, but then the road itself will be constructed and able to shed water better over its life cycle.
So we were doing that at one time. Each year, they were going back out and on every gravel road and pulling the gravel and the vegetation in off the side, which left the road a mess for a couple of days, but then you go in and get that cleared, and it allowed those roads then to drain. Because over time, they do build up and you don't get the drainage off the road.
And similar with their double surface treated roads, we don't have much of a shoulder, so as that gets pushed over to the edge, it creates those closed lips. Doing it would, ideally you want to do it the year before so that it's has a chance to be completed so that the surface treatment can be done on time. But that's an additional increase in service that hadn't previously been done to all of the roads before. There wasn't the direction or the standard established for that.
But it's an increase in service that costs us a bit extra to do, but then it saves those roads.
Mm-hmm.
You hope your trade-off's gonna be to get extended life out of your road for the cost up front, for sure.
The one that jumps out at me on that road network is the concrete road. And I went and drove that one. So it has to be marked as very poor condition just based on the length of time it's been there. That road's not in bad shape. So how do we get that adjusted? Because it's not, like I wouldn't go in and replace that one right away.
No, that one, because of all, it tricks the, we had to use the Street Logic system. So it had a LiDAR radar on top of it. It goes and it scans the roads, but with all the cuts and everything in there, it triggers it to be a lot of cracking and.
Oh, and those cuts are there, so it's not gonna frost heave and everything. Oh, okay.
Right.
So that one being very poor is not an accurate representation of
It
that
should
road.
be manually adjusted. That being said, I would suspect that if it was not going to stay concrete or it was going to be asphalt or something like that, the time to do that would be that when the water system is connected somewhere else, it's that replacing those pipes, that infrastructure, and that road would all take place as part of the same project.
Any other questions or comments on roads that? Or Carly, are you ready to put something up on the screen for us? Well, we're waiting for you to get that done. I have another question. And it sort of runs along with the guide rails and the sidewalks. We're looking at guide rails of 108,000 for the very poor to get that up to a higher level. Is there any consideration for taking small items like that and just getting them done? Like that's less than 1% of taxation in a year. And get it done and then you've got guide rails all up to a good.
Our guide rails are also one of those that are they're a bit difficult in that we have had them age-based, but as incidents occur, some of those posts have been replaced, some of those wire has been replaced, but we had previous to getting maintenance manager going, we don't know how much of that asset has actually had work done on it. So roads, I know that it's on roads list for this year is to go out and finish those inspections. In which case then we'll be able to update that overall condition. But they will also be able to mark, there are 3 posts that may be original and the rest have been, replaced because of an accident, or the wire is very rusty because it's never been replaced. And then we can apply a better condition to it. To jump back to one of the comments there about the gravel roads and the taking them to a hard surface road. I believe this previous CAO had brought a report forward that indicated that there was no class 4 roads that based on traffic count and speed limit that were gravel. Is that something that would want to be considered is based on whether or not they're considered based on the classification or a set number of vehicles, or is that because there would only be class 4, class 6, and class 5 roads that we would have that would be which would indicate a very low traffic count. Just didn't know if
We
there
have
was.
a map somewhere, don't we, that outlines what all those roads are.
Just didn't know if there was any thoughts on guidelines towards if our council would like a report forward about treatment methods versus traffic versus rural versus urban, to be able to provide more guidance on that. We have some roads that would be paved that would be a class 6 based on the number of traffic because they are in a subdivision, that we would pay, that there would be a large replacement cost for when they need to be replaced. But then we have gravel roads that are used more frequently that would be a higher class but a lower quality road.
I'm just looking at our sign from our last meeting where our considerations for existing roads fit those other things you just mentioned, like traffic count, sort of traffic in urban versus rural settings. So do we perhaps need to provide more direction to make those considerations come back to us in a report or be part of the plan?
Just, I guess that maybe would be covered in just that we bring a report forward to further refine that down. Would that be?
In my mind, for me anyway, I think it would be helpful to see where those roads are. So class 6 roads, where are they exactly and what is the traffic count? I think if we all saw where those roads were, we'd be able to say, okay, that's way out in the boonies and that's probably acceptable there because of lower traffic count, but one further in, and I use Hindman again, that's got to be getting a fair amount of traffic coming down it. When I came down it wasn't great. Sam?
So our website does have a interactive map on it that does have, you can click on a road and it will bring up the road name, the speed limit, the traffic count, and everything on it. So it is a page on our website. I just Googled Georgia Bluffs road classifications and it took me right to that page that you can click on the road and know details about that specific road.
But Brian, through you, Mayor Carlton, Brian, you're talking about a report that's not just about mapping and where the roads are, but more information for us to be able to make some specific decisions about roads. I'm guessing if you're recommending, if you're suggesting that we might want that, you're actually suggesting that this is something that ought to be done, in which case I would support it, but I just don't want to pile on extra work for you if you don't think it would be of any value for us.
Just in thinking of the cost for replacement, a gravel road is very cost efficient from a capital point, and then double surface would be maybe $30-40 a meter, no, $60 a meter in length. But then if we were to go down an asphalt road, you're getting up to significantly more, like 8 to 10 times that. So we, as mentioned, there's some roads that are not as well traveled, but they are asphalt because they have always been asphalt. And whether that is a consideration that council would like to get into, or that the appropriate road is used for the appropriate purpose instead of, or to be reflective, or is it because it's always been that we don't want to change the level of service of that road?
That is a big question, is it a question we should try and answer today, or is it a question that would be better answered with, in another meeting with the report?
So it's really, council, you have set your functional classes already. I think that's a separate discussion if you're wanting to reevaluate those functional classes that you had set. Many of those were based off of kind of minimum maintenance standards. Right now, for the purposes of a asset management plan, levels of service, what we do have included in the proposed direction here is that staff prepare a 10-year plan to achieve the goals included, including consideration of alternative services. So what we would be doing is taking your functional classes that you had already established and applying those rationales to them to help inform what we think a proposed surface treatment might be on a road. I recognize you've talked about Hyman. We have other gravel roads that have higher vehicle traffic than what Hyman did. So I don't want to scope in on one road.
No, that was just one I had driven recently, so.
Again, I don't know our criteria in the functional classes, but looking at those functional classes that council had set, if we do find that, for example, say it had gravel roads with a traffic count greater than 150 should be surface treated, that is something we would take into account for the purposes of an asset management. And vice versa, if a surface treated road maybe doesn't meet that 150 criteria, it is part of the asset management. The consideration would be, does that get moved to a gravel road? Now, because it didn't meet your criteria for a surface treatment. That is what this is saying in your direction that we have right now. You could potentially have roads going either way depending on the information that was set in your functional classes.
That second part just feels like going backwards. I think if you've already got it at a surface treated, you don't want to go backwards.
If you got your concrete road, you already have it as a concrete road, are you always going to keep it as a concrete road?
That one's kind of a special case though, because it's not going to, if we have to go in and put all the water mains in there, you're tearing that whole road up. So that would be a consideration. At the very least, it would likely go to a paved.
From a very, very practical personal perspective, I have another event this afternoon I'm hoping to make it to. I can cancel now, or if it feels like we're wrapping up, I could wrap up and make my next event. It doesn't matter, I can stay if we need to stay and broach this topic, but
We just need to maintain quorum.
You should still have that for, and I would like to stay in approve or not approve, like it is a very important topic about road quality, and I'm very happy to commit time to it if that is the topic of discussion for today, but.
And that's very good points for Councillor Day there. I think we should see where this goes before we start making any changes to just put together. So I think if we need to, put it together, put it in place, and see what 2 years down the road brings, and if it's not working out, then we got to make changes. But I don't want us to get into debating about which way we should go now and stuff, and we haven't put in play yet too. So that concrete road is a very special and unique way of doing a road, and it's a good thing we don't have a lot of them because it would cost a fortune to put a concrete road back in today. But I'd love to see this move forward and see where it goes, and just watch what happens.
Brian? Oh, and that was just was going to be my comment is, if council didn't want to see a hard surface road return to a gravel road, then that would be an acceptable direction. But if we want to include it and just see what happens, then that is fine. Just seems like there was hesitation there about turning a hard surface road back to a gravel road.
I've seen other municipalities do it, and then it just doesn't seem to go over well. And at some point, you're probably going to want to bring it back up to that level. So if you've already got it at that level, it makes more sense to maintain it. Councillor Coburn?
I don't have any hesitation in taking that direction. I think If we're looking at metrics and objective data and it doesn't support a road being at that level, then just my own perspective is I don't have any hesitation. And I know it's hard for people to be seen as the road going backwards, but we have to, our job is to look at the whole network of roads and make sure that we're applying consistency standards. So I just didn't want you to think that there was perhaps widespread hesitancy or that everyone feels that way.
Well, that is perfect for, I can take that direction to
Yeah,
want to do something that was totally not what council had envisioned, but thank you.
I'm not reading it. Oh, I'll read it loud. So if we're okay and ready to move on, I can read this motion. Jody has it broadcasted on the screen and will adjust it as I'm reading, so I'll read it out loud, and if you want to, you can follow on the screen. So that staff be directed to prepare cost estimates to adopt the following proposed levels of service to inform the township's asset management plan and future budgets. 1, that the proposed levels of service for the roads network be set as followed. That the condition of gravel roads be enhanced to good, and that poor and very poor roads be brought to an improved state of fair, and that staff be directed to prepare a 10-year plan to achieve the goal, including consideration of alternative surfaces and road types, provided that traffic counts, road location, and functional classification support this, and that staff develop a policy regarding street lighting, including dark sky considerations and neighborhood density. And 2, that the proposed levels of service and evaluation criteria for bridges and culverts be adjusted as follows. That the condition of structural culverts be maintained at good be enhanced to good within the next 10 years, and that cost-effective alternatives for replacement, including weight-restrictive bridges, where appropriate, be considered based on route connectivity and usage and traffic data. And 3, that the landfill storage building not be planned for replacement and this building be deemed surplus and removed. And 4, that the proposed levels of service and evaluation criteria for land improvements be adjusted as follows. 1, that consideration for the maintenance and capital replacement of recreation assets be tied to settlement area growth, population type, and usage levels. And that the safety of users be prioritized, including maintenance of barricades on trails to prevent off-road vehicle use where not permitted. And that assets used by children, such as playground equipment, or future assets, such as the proposed Keppel-Sarawak School Walkway, be maintained as very good. And that appropriate washroom facilities are available for use at township facilities. And 5, that the proposed levels of service and evaluation criteria for technology and communications be adjusted as follows. That the average risk assessment be reduced to low through disposal of obsolete and outdated technology, and that the average condition rating be enhanced to good through disposal of obsolete and outdated technology. And 6, that the proposed levels of service and evaluation criteria for furniture and fixtures be adjusted as follows. That the average condition rating be maintained at fair for administration and improved to good for public-facing facilities. And 7, that the proposed levels of service and evaluation criteria for machinery and equipment be adjusted as follows. That the average condition rating be maintained at good, and the township consider leasing machinery and equipment where appropriate, and that staff be directed to explore which types of equipment neighboring municipalities lease and costing. And that opportunities for standardizing equipment for interchangeable attachments and parts be considered, and that the purchase of used equipment be explored where appropriate and when available. And 8, that the proposed levels of service and evaluation criteria for vehicles be adjusted as follows. That the average condition rating be maintained at good, and that the township consider leasing vehicles where appropriate, and that assessment of vehicle types for use and service be completed, adjusted, and that procurement of hybrid or electric vehicles be prioritized where appropriate. And 9, that the levels of service and evaluation criteria for the water network be adjusted as follows. That the average condition rating be maintained at good, and the replacement of water lines to increase hydrant flow occur in conjunction with other infrastructure upgrades, i.e. road replacement. And 10, that assets be upgraded where appropriate to promote energy efficiency, including buildings and furniture and fixture upgrades. 11, that family-friendly enhancements and upgrades to accessibility be prioritized at public-facing facilities and spaces.
And 12, that staff be directed to conduct public engagement as part of the next services survey to receive feedback on the current and proposed levels of service as directed in this session for future presentation to council.
Not belittle it or whatever, great job, Carly. Going back to furniture and fixtures, we got maintained fair condition for administration. I would like to see that say good, as opposed to fair. I know we got over here on this as maintained fair condition for min, good for rec. I don't believe we need to be at fair for the min. I think we should be at a good level. That's just one that I picked up on. That again, I'm asking for the rest of council's opinion on that.
I would agree on that one. I don't think we want to, fair just seems like a very baseline. Thinking of staff who are sitting in these chairs and at these desks 35 hours a week. Does fair sound reasonable?
I think it depends on the word fair.
Yeah.
Yeah, we can get stuck on words, but what does that actually mean?
Yeah.
Just wondering, we able to give a distinction between fair and good? Or any metrics? I'm kind of putting you on the spot. I can appreciate the comment. I just wonder if people need to know what's the difference between fair and good. Does fair mean you can usually sit on the chair, it will usually hold you? And
Or with a degree of comfort.
Right. Or we talked about fair means, there's
Good working.
cuts on the side.
Good working
So-
ability otherwise, sorry.
Right now, the issue we have with our conditions, it's all based on age. So the act of a chair, for example, being fair versus good might mean it was purchased with a 2-year difference between the two. So we do have to also come up with different ways other than just age-based conditioning to determine those, and it is likely not happening this summer, recognizing the other works that these two will be working on, but it is something that we do recognize we have to determine a way. How do you measure the condition of the chair? Is it the number of scratches it has? Is it how far back it leans? Are you gonna fall backwards on it? And then we're also balancing the safety issue. Safety will always take a precedent over anything asset management. So it's hard for me to tell you what fair versus good means when we're looking at the furniture. Safety will always be.
But if we're using an age-related, yeah.
And we also talked about accessibility and health
Yeah.
and occupational health and safety being considerations here where we might not replace the chair because it's 20 years old, but if somebody had specific back issues, then
Yeah,
it might be a chair for them for sure.
Fair just seems less than what maybe could would be or should be. But I'm just wondering if it should even say fair or good or whatever. It just needs to be that the average condition rating be maintained at something for administration.
Acceptable.
You're looking at pretty good.
Yeah, pretty
Good-ish. Well, can we go fair / good? Is that,
Well, just-
Deputy Mayor's made that
Condition?
suggestion.
Or usable condition?
Yeah, if we define fair as fully functional.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Functional would be a better word, yes.
Functional.
So if something is
Condition?
broken, it's no longer fair. If something is gray and the new color of the day is green,
Yeah.
sorry, it's still in fair condition. The idea was to divert from landfills and things like that, so the idea of using an age-based 3 or 5 years and then taking those things and calling them not fair any longer doesn't seem to make sense either. And I don't know about you guys, but I feel like these the orthopedic chairs and whatever they are, I mean, that to me is almost on what I see anyways in my opinion, is it's almost on a person by person condition. Like I have a standing desk, right? Some people don't. It doesn't work for them. Some people have a really special chair. So on. Right? So I don't know. I always figured that was an outlier anyway. It's not up to us to decide. I mean.
But if we change fair to functional.
Yeah.
It's just not the wording we've used throughout.
No.
Or functional in brackets, sorry. go ahead.
Brackets.
That's okay.
Yeah.
I was just wondering if there are other issues people had with the document that I might tempt me to stay longer, or if I might duck out if we're feeling like this is pretty,
I think.
and you still
I
have
think we
quorum
got
without leaving.
Yeah.
It's pretty close, and they're
I think-
going.
I do have a question about that landfill building. Did I hear earlier that it's still being used for storage in the winter for rec department? And if we get rid of that building, where are they storing all of this? Is there another place they can go, or does that building still have value?
I do not, prior to using the landfill building, the recreation equipment was stored up at the airport in one of the hangars. In order to store it inside, we do not have any other facility. All three of the shops are full with, all the bays are full with equipment, being the backhoe, or the plow trucks in the wintertime. So since this was done, I believe that the hydro is still connected. But everything else has been, the heat has been decommissioned so that it can't accidentally be turned on. The water system has been decommissioned so that it not be using any power. I think it is down to cold storage and a interior lighting.
That's all I thought the landfill building was to start with. I wouldn't have thought that one had, did it have water in it?
Mhm.
It's a
Oh.
Need it.
washroom
Washroom. Yeah.
for the attendants.
So technically,
Okay.
a storage container would take the place of that building, basically, one of the yards?
Yeah, how much square footage are we talking about losing here?
Fairly large building.
Is it?
It is a large building, yeah. I just, until we have a storage building, and then we need to look at then the cost of a storage building to put at one of the other sites. Are we better keeping that building until we have an option? Because otherwise, we're trying to find a place to store all this equipment.
I think maybe we need to take that one away just to get a better understanding of what is being stored in there. Does it need to be stored in there? I know the water
Yeah.
meters are currently in there, that they were only in there because that was an available space. It's not
Yeah.
somewhere they need to stay. I can't speak on behalf of recreation to know, is there an alternative area for those pieces of equipment? I don't actually even know what equipment is
Yeah.
necessarily being stored in there.
Well, I think I can heard lawnmowers and that type of thing go in there in the winter, which makes sense, but I just hesitate to take down a building and get rid of it if it has a purpose, because it'll cost us way more to build a new one.
So is it that the landfill storage building is not planned for replacement and that staff be directed to explore alternative storage options for?
Are
some-
alternative storage options available if that building doesn't exist?
Yeah.
Yeah, let's find that out first before we tear down the building and then discover we need another building.
Gotcha.
To read that the storage building, now be planned for replacement. This building be surplus and removed if it is no longer stored. Sections.
That's the only
We were gonna change.
Deputy Mayor.
Yeah, we weren't gonna change fair slash good?
Or
I
functional, in brackets after fair.
have adjusted it to read that the proposal is a service and evaluation criteria for furniture and fixtures being maintained in fair condition, so long as the assets are in functional and safe state and enhanced to good at public facing facilities.
Yes.
Yes.
That.
So we want it?
Yeah,
Okay.
that captures it, I think, much better, yeah.
Sorry, did I miss the technology piece? I just see it on, I see it on one of the sheets, but I didn't.
Oh.
Ah, here we go, okay. Oh, that's right, no, I didn't miss it, very good.
I think the hard part for us keeping in mind is all of this is age related. And that's not maybe really an accurate way of, I don't know, judging or comparing. Because just because something has reached its 10-year lifespan, these tables in 10 years, I would expect to still be tables and still be functional. You know, so just because they've reached 10 years of age doesn't mean that all of a sudden they've gone to being very poor.
Same is true with technology.
Yeah, our
In fact, it
classification
lasts
is,
much longer than we used to.
yeah.
Something we are exploring on other ways that we can, other than just age, on how we can determine a condition. It unfortunately takes a bit of time.
Yeah.
We are trying to prioritize some of the ones that council has expressed a higher resistance. So for playgrounds, we're going to be looking at creating inspection sheets and matrices and determining what is still considered a very good condition, because that is something council in this direction has prioritized as being a high priority. So as we work through, it is something we will also be expanding on to not only just be land improvements, but all asset classes.
Okay. Anything else anyone sees? Okay. Are we at the point of getting a mover and a seconder to go ahead with these, or that's?
If we're comfortable with the direction that's been read out loud and then subsequently revised, a mover and seconder would be appropriate at this time. Yeah, I think that's the order of operations that we had put together, but.
Yeah, so we would go back into special counsel and then we'll take that direction. Okay. So the recommendation now is that council of the Township of Georgian Bluffs moves back into its special council session at 4:12 p.m. Could I have a mover and a seconder, please? Councilman Combs, Deputy Mayor Pringle, all in favor? That is carried. So then direction out of strategic session is exactly what we've read off there. And if there's no further questions on that, I will ask for a mover and a seconder, please. Councilor Coburn, Deputy Mayor Pringle. I will call the vote, all in favor. It's carried. And confirming bylaw. The bylaw is that bylaw number 2026-029, being a bylaw to confirm the proceedings of council on May 11th, 2026, be read a first, second, and third time, finally passed, signed by the mayor and clerk, sealed with the seal of the corporation, and engrossed in the bylaw book. Could I have a mover and a seconder, please? Councilor McComb, Deputy Mayor Pringle. All in favor? That is carried. Council will meet May 20th at 5 p.m. Sorry, that first one should be 2 p.m. for special council and May 20th at 5 p.m. for regular council. As business has concluded, I will now call for adjournment of this special meeting. Could I have a mover and a seconder, please? Deputy Mayor Pringle, Councilor McComb, all in favor? That is carried. Thank you.